I know this arouses a lot of emotions. Now that you've had a couple of days to digest this, how are you feeling about Elon Musk buying Twitter?
I mean, it's just a disappointment because I think the company really could use great stewardship at this point, and what he's revealing is just how unserious a person he is about both his ideas for the product and the philosophy that underpins it.
So I think some would say it's a disappointment that Twitter hasn't grown faster, racked up more users, become more influential. How would you respond to that?
100%. I mean, like, the business performance of the company has always sort of dragged behind the cultural importance of the company. We always have known that it has a much bigger footprint with journalists and with media, celebrities, musicians, that it has this huge cultural footprint. And I think that's what made it an attractive opportunity for Elon.
So what do you think is missing from the conversation? We've seen pundits talking about this now for 3 weeks. We've heard from Elon himself, a lot of debates. But, what do you think is missing given your vantage point and history with this company going back 15 years?
So, I mean, I think the biggest problem is the free speech framing that he continues to use to talk about what he wants to do with the product. It just reveals a very naive, unserious approach to the content moderation issues he will face. And I say it's unserious because his own standard of we should just allow for anything that's not disallowed by law is self-defeating, because he's talked about wanting to remove anonymous content. He's talked about wanting to remove bots. Both of those things are examples of content that is not, that are not, there's no First Amendment carve out for anonymity. You can definitely express yourself anonymously. And so it just shows that he hasn't really kind of put the dots together on what needs to happen in this space.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, because we had a very lively debate here on the show yesterday with David Sachs and Tim O'Brien, our Bloomberg opinion columnist. I want you to take a quick listen to that exchange.
The platform is absolutely rife with bots, and I think Elon has already promised he's going to crack down on bots, and he has expertise at his disposal, the premier AI engineers who he can deploy to solve that problem. I actually think that Elon's going to make...
But isn't anonymous speech free speech too?
Not if it's fake speech. So the first, hold on a second, let me finish. When you put bots on Twitter and pretend to be someone you're not, when you basically violate the authenticity requirement, you are basically perpetrating a kind of fraud. That is not free speech, that's fake speech. It is perfectly fair game under any kind of free speech policy to take down those kinds of bots. And I fully expect that Elon will be far more effective at doing that than the current management of Twitter, because they've been unable to do that.
Jason, what's your reaction to that?
I mean, that's a standard that is in no way supported by free speech legislation. That's no way supported by a constitutional standard of what free speech is, or it's just a notion that he's exposing, that anonymous speech somehow doesn't get free speech protections. There's no case law that establishes that's true. He's just purporting that to be true. And moreover, if that's a standard, what other things would he look to remove? Are we going to remove, for example, or are we going to allow back on the platform people who harass parents of children who are murdered at Sandy Hook? Because even if they use their real names, like, this just isn't a serious standard that's being articulated, and he hasn't thought through, and David hasn't thought through all of the implications that would come from adopting it.
So by free speech, Elon says he means that which matches the law. I am against censorship that goes far beyond the law. What are your biggest fears about Elon Musk taking over Twitter?
So the type of content that Twitter has cleaned up in the last, 6 years, 7 years, include things that were in response to real world occurrences. You go back to 2015 and you look at the rife of content that was being used by ultra extremists, including ISIS, to recruit people off of Twitter. And so there was beheading videos and just content in general that was meant to appeal to an audience to recruit people to ultraviolence. Are we going to allow that back on? Those acts may be illegal, but the content about it is not illegal. There's no First Amendment rule that says that you cannot use speech in that way. So there's no case law that would support Elon's contention that content has to be removed because of legal reasons. So I just don't think that standard holds water when you look at the type of things that he is going to want to still not be on the platform.
Now, Jack Dorsey, and obviously I know you worked closely with Jack in the earliest days, he thanked Elon for getting Twitter out of a, quote, impossible situation, to which you responded with a meme of a guy in a hot dog suit saying, It was an impossible situation, says founder in control of company for the last decade. What are you trying to say there?
I mean, Jack has been either the executive chairman with control of the company or the CEO since October of 2010. He's had the most direct role in shaping the course of the company for the past 12 years. When he wrote his resignation letter in just of November of last year, he said, "I worked hard to ensure the company can break away from its founding and its founders." And so to now say, to now be only less than 5 months from that and say solving for the problem of it being a company, Elon is the singular solution I trust. What happened in the last 5 months? I thought it had been established in this trajectory that was able to break away from the founding and its founders. And now Elon Musk, someone who's never been involved before except for being a troll on the platform, is the singular solution to the trajectory of the company. That seems curious.
Do you think Jack, I mean, do you blame Jack for anything here? Is there something you think he should be answering to?
Well, he said, I mean, the biggest thing just concretely today is that Elon is using the platform to troll the employees of the company that Jack's led, for the past 12 years. And that's Vidya and that's other people in the trust and safety organization. And you can absolutely critique decisions, content moderation decisions that have been made by the company. But if you absolutely should not allow the prospective owner of the company to troll your employees for the decisions that they made. And that's really what's going on here and puts the lie to the free speech argument. Elon's not interested in debating this question of, what content should be allowed or not. He is simply turning his army of fans on these employees and allowing them to be targets of racist abuse and threats. That's not the Lincoln Douglas debates. That's not Cicero in the forum. That's not the marketplace of ideas. That's just using the product as an active troll to harass and target employees. And Jack and the board absolutely should have the backs of their employees in that case. So that's just a concrete example of something happening right now.
Twitter was often, even in its earliest days, overshadowed by this sort of Game of Thrones drama. I think even you would agree with that. And I wondered, do you think there has been speculation that Jack perhaps had something to do with this, and before maybe even Elon Musk started buying shares? What do you think of that theory?
I mean, so I think there's the problem with most conspiracies is that they're too clever for anyone to keep secret. And in the case of, Jack or anyone else on the board actually working with Elon to or kind of originate this deal, that obviously would trip a number of legal red lines that I don't think folks would be very comfortable doing, and would therefore even just increase the chances that it would leak. I do think it's possible / likely, and I take Jack at his word when he said, "Oh, this Elon solution looks like the only solution available," that he was supportive of Elon coming in and owning the company, probably because he felt like, he no longer was going to be involved. So this was another way out. I would just point out that's in direct distinction and in contradiction to what he said 5 months ago when he said the company was in great hands and he had no concerns about stepping away.
What have you heard from current Twitter employees? What's it like working at Twitter right now?
I don't know. I don't want to speak for current employees. I will say for former employees, it's been, and those of us who were there from the sort of early times, it's just depressing. It's sad to see this thing that was built be looked after by someone who hasn't really thought through the issues, hasn't really kind of taken care to do the research on what product is they need to build. He's, in addition to the free speech questions, he's also just not articulating a coherent product vision of what he wants to do with the product or why he was interested in buying it. And so that's just it's a disappointing endpoint to this part of the Twitter journey.